call the Village Board meeting to order. If you would stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Welcome everyone, and welcome everyone watching at home tonight. First will be roll call. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
Trustee Hart?
Present.
Trustee Gett?
Present.
Trustee Dan Mariscal? Trustee Diane Mariscal?
Present.
Trustee Reichert?
Present.
Trustee Carter?
All right, thank you. Come on. Yeah, Chief Sutton is away tonight. Next would be the approval of the Board of Trustees minutes for Tuesday, March 19th, 2019. I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Next is correspondence. Madam Clerk, any correspondence?
I do not have any correspondence, Mayor.
Okay. On to announcements. I'll let you handle the Easter announcements, Sarah, if you would.
Sure. If you guys have been downtown or out in our park today, I'm sure you've seen Easter bunny prints. This weekend it's happening in the Heights, and we hope you guys can all come out to it. It's a free event from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. in our downtown, in our business district. If you look online, there's a map of participating businesses, and we're encouraging the children with their families to hop from business to business, where businesses will provide Easter eggs and treats, and leading them up to Tower Park here at 11. We'll have an Easter egg hunt, and we'll have in categories age specific, and we will have an Easter bunny. He'll be around the downtown, and he will be up here in Tower Park. And then we have an Easter concert by Julie Kay, which will be following that. So hopefully everyone can come on out and spread the word.
Thank you. Okay, right into Trustees Reports. The first is Economic and Community Development. Trustee Dan Mariscal.
Thank you, Mayor. I have nothing to report this evening.
Okay, on to Police. Trustee Carter.
I don't, unless Chris has something to add.
I do not.
Nothing? Okay. Next is Building and Property Maintenance. Trustee Gett.
I don't have anything right now at this moment. I have something that's on the schedule here, so we'll take care of that when it comes up.
Okay. Fire. Trustee Reichert.
I have nothing to report, thank you, Mayor.
I do want to take this time to thank Chief Walters. I had a family member had a issue in the parking lot, a medical issue, and he took very good care of her, so I want to publicly thank him for his quick response. Much appreciated. Next is Public Works. Trustee Harn.
Thank you, Mayor Phelan. I don't have anything unless Dave or Mike have something they'd like to talk about.
Gentlemen? Surely there's something. Okay. No, there's Dave. Nothing, Dave? Okay. Moving right along. Administration. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay, we would be at comments from the audience. Please come forward. Anyone would like to speak? If you could keep your remarks to 5 minutes or less, and if you'd give your name, please, and address. And what organization you're with?
I'm here with my brother, Lion Rick, and I'm Lion Mark. We represent the Peoria Heights Suburban Lions Club. We're here to present our next proposal to improve the park. I have submitted a rough drawing to everybody to look at. What we'd like to get accomplished this year is to get a path from one entrance of the park across to the other in front of the playground. From being down there numerous hours, I noticed one of the biggest problems seems to be the girls pushing the strollers and things through the rough ground. So a sidewalk minimal would be needed, but we've come to find out that an 8-foot path blacktop is the same cost as a 4-foot, so that's what we're going with right now, is an 8-foot pathway all the way from the Glen entrance over to the other entrance, and then it would even be blacktop to the street. So it'd be fully paved walkway. I plan on, by the drawing, I plan on maybe making it look kind of like a roadway so the kids could ride their trikes and act like they're on the street or what have you, walking and things. We would look at putting a buttress on the Glen side so nobody would want to act like they could drive onto the lane, and maybe a crosswalk or a couple other things to decorate it. A couple street signs. Here would be like a typical street sign for the name of the Earl Carter Lane, and then maybe a couple stop signs or something also. I know Peoria has what's called Bicycle Safety Town, and it's very popular with the kids and things. This would be, of course, a very small version, but it would give something to, something to get them started as far as road signs and such. We have collectively agreed to pay for the project in total, and somewhere around $5,000 we estimate. And so we will be looking for a vote, hopefully an approval in the future, so we could proceed.
Okay, well, thank you for your efforts, and we appreciate you raising all the funds, but I would encourage you, please work with Mike Casey in the Public Works Department, and then the board will want to approve, changes to the park, so we can bring that to the board when you have after you meet with Public Works. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Public comments open? Public comment going once, going twice. Public comments closed. On to old business. Any old business to come before the board tonight? Okay, we'll get right into new business. The first is the approval of the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. Trustee Mariscal, I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
I make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I do, okay. Any discussion on the motion? I think we've discussed this thoroughly. If you're ready for the vote, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Reichert.
Aye.
Trustee Carter.
All right, thank you. Next is ordinance 2019-1586, a special ordinance authorizing the seating of private activity bonding authority. Trustee Mariscal, could I have a motion to approve this?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 2019-1586.
And may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Roy Bachler, you're here tonight. Will you explain what we're doing here, please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor, for asking me to come and try to take this topic and simplify it a little bit. First off, I am not an attorney and I'm not a lawyer. Bonding is a very complicated form of financing that's afforded to government bodies. And each year, each community and unit of governments are allocated by the state so many dollars. I believe the Heights has around $600,000 that's allocated to them. In simplification, if you don't use it, if you don't put it out into something, you lose it. It goes back actually kind of to a black hole with the state of Illinois, which then is reallocated to somewhere else in the state. Back in the 80s, the state created development authorities, regional development authorities. And there was one here for Central Illinois that was allocated, however, did not get up and started and running. The Tri-County River Valley Development Authority, known as TRIBDA. And it is a Peoria, Tazewell, Woodford County bonding authority that has a broader scope of purpose and activities. The beauty of it is that you can allocate your bonding authority to it, and it's kind of like a depository bank. You can put it there and it stays in existence, stays here locally. And so if you do have a project or something later that you need additional bonding authority, you can work with TRIPTA and they'll be able to help you with your bonding allocations and everything. So it keeps it here locally. I think there's about 7 or 8 development authorities throughout the state of Illinois. Andy Hamilton, who I spoke with today, is the executive director for all of those authorities, and he is the guru of bonding authority or bonding throughout the whole state and everything. He did offer up to, he'd love to come and talk with you folks and talk with the board or people or administration and give a better understanding of how bonding programs do work. I think they are a great thing because they allow for a type of financing that has tax-exempt interest earns attached to it. The beauty of the Development Authority ones, those are double tax exempt. Plus the state and the federal are tax-free. And so for institutions to buy these bonds for long-term interest rates that affords to the development is an excellent tool available for financing and afforded to everybody. So I hope that kind of clarifies. It just will allow your authority, your dollars to kind of actually stay local.
Well, you may not be a lawyer, but you're a banker, and you explained that very well, so thank you.
Yeah, about the same thing.
Any questions for Mr. Bachler?
Yeah, I do. So where's the $615,000 come from? Is that something the village has to put in there? And
No, it's a state allocation. They provide to government bodies to put out into bonds, or think of it as a financing option.
Okay.
And then if they create the bond, those bonds are sold to investors or sold to banks. If you do municipal bonds here, banks love buying them if they're bank qualified because the earnings off of that is tax-free. So they can create a lower cost project for the developer or whatever the project is by using this vehicle. It's,
Okay, so I'm assuming we have to vote on it. So if we don't vote on it, if we vote no, what's that mean?
It means that your bonding allocation for this year, as I understand it, will just dissipate. And it'll go back to the state of Illinois.
Right.
Who then they can reallocate it to someone, and it could be up in Chicago and everything. All it does is that preserves it to be used here in central Illinois if needed upon. And plus it doesn't expire. I think there's a 3-year limitation on those dollars for the authorities. So the allocations are redone annually by the state. And so it's a case of use it or lose it.
Okay, that's answered my question.
So if we accept it, then they'll allocate more next year?
Right, they'll allocate more to you next year. If you got projects you can use it on, that's great.
Are there limitations on the projects you can use it for?
Yes, there is limitations. As your municipality limitations are much more defined, Tri-County Regional, TRIBDA has a much broader scope of projects they can offer up bonding under. Senior housing is a good example. It's used. I know of communities have used their bonding authority to transfer to a housing unit to be able to use that so they can get fixed rate long-term interest rates. Typically, a bank can't offer fixed rate, but they do buy securities and bonds, and so that makes it attractive for them to buy these.
So we're not voting on this tonight? Are we?
we are.
What are we doing with this tonight?
We are voting on this.
So how long do
So
we
if
have?
we don't do it tonight and accept it, I mean, this sounds like something we really shouldn't turn our nose up at, and I'd like to, if we vote on it, do we have to, we looked at, there's all kinds of stuff we can use money for, and I don't want to turn my nose up to a possibility for
I
some of
think it
this.
has to be adopted by, go ahead,
It
Council.
does. I might shed a little bit of light on this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all this is borrowing authority. You have an annual limit on how much you can, authorize and borrow in the form of these bonds. If we keep that money ourselves, that borrowing authority, we could do a project up to this $600,000, $615,000 limit, but it's limited to industrial projects. I don't think we would have anything that would even qualify. If we did to do a bond transaction for that small of an amount of money, it sounds like a lot of money. But with bonds, the cost of issuance is more expensive than a regular loan, and the cutoff is about $1 million. Anything under $1 million, we don't typically recommend bonding. But if you get up into the $1.5 million, $2 million, $5 million range, the savings are dramatic.
Yeah,
And
but
so all we're
ours
doing
isn't that high. This is not that high we got going on here.
It's not, but if we ever had a project that we wanted to do, we could go to this organization, Trivda, and present that project and perhaps bond it for $2 million because they've aggregated all other municipalities in the area, like you said, Woodford, some Metamora, all these municipalities that aggregate their, and it's year by year, so their 2019 bonding authority, well, 2 years from now, if we've got a project, everybody aggregates their 2021 bonding authority. Well, now there's a pool of available bonding authority, and it's not our money. It's not like we're giving $615,000 to anyone. We're just saying we're not going to use it to borrow. So if you want to borrow, it's your deal, and you got to pay the interest, and it has no effect on our liability whatsoever.
Okay, so we don't have to vote on and take it this year because we really don't have any use for it.
We wouldn't have
But down the road, it's not going to hurt us any to not vote on it and keep it this.
Correct.
We can go ahead and let it slide this year, and then next year look and see where we're at. And
If we ever have a project that I'm aware of that I think would be appropriate for bond financing like this, I would absolutely recommend that to you, and we would check.
I mean, because I don't want to pass up free money. I mean, we can't pass
It's
up.
not.
But I understand, but I don't want to hold on to it for ourselves if it can be used somewhere. I mean, we're all still the state of Illinois, and if it can be used somewhere else,
So let me
fine.
get it.
If it's not going to benefit us, and if it's going to be better, we hold off and wait.
This
kinda
is
what I think.
This is akin to a credit card that the state gives you that says, you've got a credit limit of $615,000. You can only use it on certain types of projects. Well, we don't have that project, and we're not going to use it. So if we say, we're not going to use but if you want to borrow on our credit limit, we're not obligated to pay it back. It's your borrowing. So we're throwing it in the pool. And whoever borrows pays all of the debt, all of the interest. It costs us nothing. But if we don't use it, nobody can use it. And ultimately, I guess it does divert back to the state, and the state can use it. But this is a way of keeping that borrowing authority local.
So if we say yes, $615,000 stays in that pool.
Yep.
We don't use it, but everybody else can. But if we say no, it goes back to the state and they can do whatever they want with it.
In a sense, is that what you're doing
It
is
doesn't make any sense.
saying we're going to transfer it to a regional authority that's here versus just letting it go back to the state. So you're in a sense potentially helping other
Central
communities
Illinois
in the region.
areas.
You have control of saying, we want to keep it locally, or we want it to go back to the state. If you don't vote to transfer it, then it will go back to the state of Illinois, and they can allocate to anybody they want to.
So basically, if we want to help downstate Illinois, we should probably vote on this and keep it down here.
Yes.
So our
Keep
local
it
community,
in our
instead of
counties.
going back up to Chicago.
Correct.
Which, if that one representative has his way, it's going to be the 51st state.
Do we get the
So-
It
$600,000?
is a unique way to
have to
keeping allocations locally.
Well, I'm all
we
for
could just-
favor of taking care of Central Illinois.
The odds of us ever having an eligible project are very limited. If we have an eligible project, we would never use bond financing for a $600,000 transaction. We would have to go to an aggregator like this.
So what I'm asking is if we don't use the $615,000 by the end of the year, or whatever, however long it's good for, and another area doesn't come in and ask for it, do we get then another every year? Then we would get another, and it just keeps building?
You get an allocation every
And
year.
this is really a housekeeping matter, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just a housekeeping.
It's an annual,
Doesn't go like 615,000 this year.
No.
Now we got
You
1,200.
lose it at the end of the year.
You lose it,
Doesn't-
okay.
We don't roll it over, so the next year we have.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was
Okay.
3 years. I thought I heard 3 years. No?
The authority, I think the authority has to use it within a 3-year period.
So by aggregating it, they can sit on it and use it for 3 years. We can't, but an aggregator, this Tri-County River Valley Development Authority can use it for up to 3 years.
Where they
So
can,
that just makes
they
it
can,
feasible.
by the way, this is something we do every year.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you've done,
I don't ever
I
remember
don't
this.
remember any of this stuff here.
No.
well, maybe
I've
it wasn't
been-
explained to you like this, you didn't know what you're voting on, but we've done this.
Right, because I did 2 terms, and then I'm back now, and I don't recall this being explained. Trustee Carter?
No, I
Trustee
agree.
Reichert?
No.
You've been on here since Christ was a corporal.
Was it available to, is this even something we were doing? Well, the village is growing so much lately that it's probably something that's worth having available. Someone might want to.
I say we
I didn't see the.
vote to keep it so we can help downstate Illinois, help central Illinois. We're all neighbors in here, and neighbors help each other out, so, I mean, if anybody's got an objection to it, I'm more than willing to listen to it.
As a private citizen, I think it's an excellent thing to do to transfer it to TRIBDA and have it available. And I think it's also wise to have a representative from TRIBDA come and sometime at an off meeting or somewheres to fully better explain the opportunities, because as the Heights is developing and growing, there may be an opportunity down the road that you're going to, bonding may be a financing tool that could be a part of that. So this keeps it locally, and I would recommend it.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I believe we have the motion, the second, correct, Madam Clerk? All right.
Trustee Hart.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Reichert. Trustee Carter.
Okay, thank you, everyone. That's good discussion. Appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Bachler and council. So next we would be at Resolution 2019-2, proposed First Amendment TIF number 2 redevelopment project inducement resolution. Before I ask Mr. Nelson to explain that, Trustee Dan Mariscal, may I have a motion to approve this?
Absolutely. I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-02.
May I have a second?
Second.
Trustee Mariscal, would you like to say anything before?
I'll let this gentleman go ahead and set it up.
All right, Nick, go ahead.
Okay, so so this is for Peoria Heights TIF District 2. The village is contemplating doing an amendment to bring additional property in. The primary purpose is for the McDonald's. They're going to do an addition to the building, add a playground, and I think they're trying to attempt to reduce some of the traffic issues getting from Prospect into the drive-through lanes. It's going to cost quite a bit of money to do that if they can get it accomplished. So what this does is this preserves the right for McDonald's to start the project now and to be reimbursed for those costs later once the TIF is officially amended and that property is brought into the TIF district. So this just preserves that right now. The village will still have to do a redevelopment agreement with the developer, but that'll be done at a point in the future once the amendment's done.
So I would say that this is caused in part by a lot of the new development going on here. This is causing other business owners to invest more in their businesses. And we had been talking with McDonald's for over a year, but due to the announcement of the hotel and the other development happening, this has caused them to decide to move forward with their plans to build what they're telling us is one of their very nice stores. So that will be more jobs for the community, more sales tax, and et cetera. So questions for Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I do. What happened with Subway? I mean, weren't we going to figure out if we could move up to Subway? Now we're going to see if we can move up to Prospect and War Drive? I mean, where
We've
does
been
it
working
end?
extensively with
Where's it
Subway.
gonna end?
Yeah, that's still being ironed out as far as that being also a part of the amendment, getting that in a TIF district and moving them, but
We're working with multiple
Yeah, that's
businesses
still,
right
those
now,
conversations are still going on.
Subway is one of them. It's more for them to announce. We're not ready yet because the details have not been worked out to bring anything to you publicly. McDonald's is ready, and that's why we're bringing it to you.
But
Where's it gonna,
has to
what's it
connect.
coming from? Is it coming from Ward Drive TIF? Or is it coming, are we
Down
gonna
Prospect.
combine them? Or, there's a
Yeah.
lot of questions I got going on here with.
Yeah, as far as the amendment to the TIF, that's, again, that's still being ironed out amongst different the school districts involved in conversations and, all the developers that are involved. So we're not quite there yet as far as exactly where the amendment's going to be, but at a minimum, it's going to.
There yet, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if we're not there yet, then I'm not there yet to even look at this part. I mean, we have to, I mean, in my eyes,
Inducement, though, this is just saying we will look at it, right?
we have an intent to move forward to, and like.
I thought it was an intent to look at it and consider it.
Right, and this has nothing to do with the Subway. Like I said, this is just for the McDonald's. Yeah.
Exclude Subway, that's to get the TIF project that's over there on Ward Drive, to get it moved up. Kemp, isn't it Kemp that owns that land?
Gary Kemp.
Kemp, right. So he owns the land. We had a meeting, last meeting I was in was to get the TIF over there to move the boundaries. And now we're going to move the boundaries again to Prospect and Glen.
But isn't McDonald's already in that TIF?
No.
Oh, great.
This is the TIF that they're going to be connected to. So again, we haven't nailed down the exact boundary that's going to be amended, but it's going to connect to this one. Now, whether that includes the lawyer, at a minimum,
But where I'm going at with this, if you guys, thank you, is, okay, so we had Kemp come in and they want, we're gonna try to work with them to get this in here. Now we have McDonald's coming in. Who's next up on Prospect? I'm sure Pizza Works is gonna wanna go in there maybe. I mean, what about the veterinarian place? And now we're coming up Prospect and.
Pizza Works should
Where
go.
are we gonna stop?
Pizza Works, yeah, I agree with the trustee.
So I'm concerned, that's where I'm concerned at, is where is this TIF gonna stop? Where's it going at?
I kind of
I'm a
think
little scared on this stuff.
I think we ought to just, it seems like we're constantly doing these TIFs. And we should just figure out a way to get them all connected, because you got Katy Cat's, you got
Pizza Works.
Pizza Works. Pizza Works could definitely use the help on it.
Got that whole side of Prospect.
Yeah.
Yes, and I kind of think we're not that much farther off to get hooked up with up here in the Heights, the BDD and all that stuff. I think we should just kind of look at all our TIFs, because it helps out the sewers and help me out here.
The streets, sewers, sidewalks could be done.
Our businesses need the help. They don't have the money to do it themselves, and if it helps the Heights, I mean, I know there was, in the past, somebody said they don't want to make the whole Heights a TIF district. I understand that. But where we're talking is businesses. This is going to help the Heights. We need, if the businesses can be helped.
And it's all commercial.
It's all commercial, all going all the way up on the left. It's a good idea. I mean, we can even get, TNT's already in it? They're not in it yet, are they?
I don't think so.
But there's that right there on the corner of Lake and Prospect, which used to be Speed Service. I don't know if you remember that. I know Mayor Phelan does. There's nothing going on with that either. I mean, they could always use the help.
Thank you.
Oh, I might as well, if I'm going down the age hole, I mean, we might as well bring you in it too, but I think it'd be a good idea just to try and get them all connected.
So there's the amendment.
We're spending the money.
If someone's not in the TIF district and they want to be in the TIF district, you have to amend your TIF.
Just do this.
So there's the TIF amendment, that's something separate. This is an inducement resolution that allows them to start the project before the TIF is actually amended, so that at some point in time in the future, when you enter into a redevelopment agreement, the costs that they've incurred prior to the TIF amendment to bring them in, those costs can be reimbursed in the future once an agreement's executed. So this is not an agreement, this isn't, you're not agreeing to pay them anything just yet, this just allows them to start the project, and if an agreement is entered into, then they can be reimbursed for the cost.
We have Kemp that did it, now we have McDonald's that did it, now word gets out, we could possibly maybe go up Prospect if the board approves. Now we got all these businesses coming at us one at a time, and we have to do this for every one of them until we figure out where this TIF line is going, right?
Well, it was going to cost us $15,000 to $20,000, right, to put Subway, that property that Kemp owns, in that, I'm sorry for saying Subway, that property there at the corner of Monroe and Ward Drive. So is it another $15,000 to $20,000 to add McDonald's?
No, as a practical matter, if you're considering adding other properties or projects to the TIF, it's simpler to do it all in one shot. So if you want to bring in Pizza Works or the Subway or any of those businesses along Prospect, it makes more sense to do it now within this one amendment for just that one cost. So if you're planning for the future, it makes more sense to, be more inclusive.
So the board will have a policy decision sometime to make in the near future.
That's right. But then this inducement resolution is not the TIF amendment. This is just for the particular development, again, for them to be able to recoup the costs in the future once an agreement is done. So you'll probably have to do inducement resolutions if there are more projects that come forward, and those projects aren't in the TIF but are in the area you're considering amending to the TIF district. We'll have to do more of these. But the TIF amendment, that's just going to be a one-time amendment where you add whatever properties you want to add to it.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So this is just an inducement to get
McDonald's started.
Get their project going.
Yes, that's right.
But and I agree with you. It seems to me it's more cost-effective and a better idea. Just we need to figure out if we're going to connect all these TIFs together and get it done and over with for the same low price, instead of every time somebody else wants to do it in development, oh, we need to expand this TIF. Well, okay, there's more money. We can't be fortunate like with Kim Blickenstaff and with Larry Herman and stuff, where they were willing to pay the fee because not everybody's got that kind of bank to do it.
Larry took TIF money.
Yeah. Well, he did, but not everybody. But it's still.
Kim did. Kim doesn't need it. He doesn't. So far, he hasn't wanted.
Yeah, but he didn't.
TIF money so far.
Well, basically, we need to. If we're going to do this, we need to figure it all out where the TIFs are, and if we're going to connect them all, we need to get it done and over with instead of messing around with this and quit nickel and diming ourselves. Because otherwise, this TIF's not really going to pay off. We got to do this. That's the way I see it. If we're going to pull the trigger, let's pull the trigger. Go big or stay home.
Anyone else?
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk, call the roll. Thank you, Nick.
Trustee Hart.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker.
Aye.
Trustee Carter.
Nay.
Okay, we would be at the approval of Chuck's Auto Sales Quarterly Special Use Permit. Trustee Mariscal, I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve Chuck's Auto Sales Quarterly Special Use Permit.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, go ahead, Trustee Mariscal.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, I believe, and Deputy Chief Ahart, feel free to chime in. I believe he didn't pass the inspection the last time we were looking at approving it, so I don't know, has that changed?
It does, yeah, he's in compliance now.
Okay, so unless anyone else, unless anyone else has any other questions, I'm in favor of approving it.
Questions? Okay, we're glad they're in compliance. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Hart.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker.
Aye.
Trustee Carter.
Okay, next is a request for approval of BDD expenditure in the amount of $60,235.49 in conjunction with 2019 seal coating program. Trustee Harn, could I have a motion to approve this?
Make a motion, we approve this.
May I have a second?
Second.
I'm going to ask Mr. Shields to speak, but Trustee Harn, anything you'd want to say before?
I'm wanting to hear what
Kevin, go.
the BDD has to say, and then we'll discuss.
Welcome, Kevin.
Sure, and I appreciate that, Trustee Harn.
And by the way, Kevin Shields is the chair of the Business Development District Committees.
Yep. So the BDD committee met last Tuesday. It was about an hour deliberation. Representatives from the engineering firm were there. We got some more information from them. The request for the BDD funds was put to vote, and that recommendation for approval was denied. It was a unanimous decision. The reason for that was the BDD committee members felt like the original purpose of the BDD was to set aside funds to improve the BDD specifically, and to things like the exterior commercial, facade program, redevelopment agreements, things like that. And ultimately, while we understand that this seal coating program is desperately needed, we're all aware of that. We think the proposal that was put forth by the engineering firm is a good one to do the fog seal. The concern was ultimately the business members in the BDD get double taxed. So our sales tax goes towards things like this, infrastructure improvements, but then the BDD also contributes their proportional share, which is roughly 30-some%. So essentially we're paying twice for it. So while certainly under the statute, infrastructure improvements are appropriate and eligible BDD expenses, our interpretation of that is that should be infrastructure improvements that are wholly within the BDD, such as the sewer improvements that we're in support of. Something that's getting kicked year to year that we can come in and say, here's a $50,000, $60,000 expense. We would like to use BDD funds for it so it can be done now, because we understand that the village's budgetary issues aren't going to allow it to be done. Where we end up in this somewhat concerning issue is, when this BDD was approved, it's got terrible wonky borders. It does. It's terrible. It shouldn't have been approved like this. You've got half a prospect in it, half a prospect's not in it. So when you go to do a seal coating program, half of it's in the BDD, or 30-some% of it's in the BDD, and a lot of it's not. So it becomes very difficult for us to justify those expenses as a BDD expense because it's not wholly within the BDD or majority in the BDD. So that's ultimately why the BDD members felt like it was a slippery slope, where all of a sudden BDD funds, as they're accruing, will begin to be used for just general maintenance and infrastructure projects that are getting paid for anyway through your sales tax. The other issue that we have is we look to extend the BDD in the future to kind of hopefully get rid of these boundary problems. So when programs like the LED light program come in, we can say, yeah, that's in the BDD. It runs all prospect do it, where we're not paying proportional shares. As we look to extend that, and I think that should be a goal of the BDD, to extend it. There was opposition to that, and that's why the restaurants in the north, the block north of it, are not in it. I think it becomes very difficult for us to make a case to those restaurant owners and those business owners to say, join the BDD. Because if you join the BDD and there's an extra 1% sales tax, here are some of the things we can do with that money. It becomes very difficult, because when they say, well, what have you done with the money? And we say, well, we got seal coating. And they look out in front of the doors and they go, we did too, and we didn't have to charge an extra 1%. It becomes very difficult, and that was the opposition from the beginning. The opposition was, you're going to get charged 1%, it's going to go into a fund, and you're never going to see any, you're never going to see any improvements from it. It's just going to be a fund, an extra source of revenue that goes to general operating expenses. So that's ultimately why that was denied. There was a motion made to amend the request to make it a loan from the BDD fund to the village operating fund, on the terms that it's, there's no interest, as long as council's okay with it, there's no interest. As long as those funds are repaid, made whole within 3 years. No payment plan, just as long as within 3 years from the date that money is given from the BDD fund to the operating fund, within 3 years, the BDD fund is made whole. I certainly understand that is not what you as trustees were expecting or even put on the table. That motion was made, that motion was passed. Then the motion for approval of that recommendation was made, and it was unanimously approved. So the recommendation that the BDD committee has is for the BDD fund to loan that money to the village's operating fund, so that project can be done this year. It's our understanding if we don't, it'll be a compromise program, or it just won't get done this year. On the condition that money is repaid to the BDD fund within 3 years. I will reemphasize again, as I have every time I've come up here, we are an advisory committee. You are not beholden to take our recommendation, but I just would offer up that, we've been able to get some business leaders to sit on this committee with the understanding that the recommendation would be heard. And I've taken it back to them that's exactly what you guys did at the last meeting, to give us extra time to deliberate that. So I would just simply say that I think to not listen to these business leaders would be a mistake, but as council will tell you, we are simply an advisory committee, so that's our recommendation, that to take those BDD funds, loan it to the village, to do the seal code program this year, and when more revenue comes into the village, that the BDD fund be made whole.
Okay, you're saying loan?
Sure.
What kind of an interest? Are we talking a low interest, no
Zero.
interest loan?
Zero.
So
That's why I don't like calling it a loan.
But I'm sorry for jumping on that.
Sure, no, it's okay. I don't like that term either, but
you're talking
I don't know how else to say
within
it.
3 years, you said?
Yeah.
As long as we could pay that back, and that's Mayor Phelan or somebody, that's
Maybe
I would say we
Stephanie
make
could.
This would be a good faith effort to pay this money back. It could be over the 3 years, it could be at the three-year mark, but...
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I mean, you guys are willing to help us out. You are Peoria Heights businesses. I mean, I'm more than willing to.
So Stephanie,
work
do you
with each
have
other.
a place in the budget or somewhere that you can see in the budget where we could add that in and pay this back in a timely manner?
No. Short answer, no. There is no money in the general fund budget this year. I don't anticipate that with the increase in projects that we have, that we are going to have $60,000 in the next 3 years to repay it. Staff has discussed this. There's been concerns about, this is an MFT eligible project. We are not certain, we have not been able to get a direct answer of whether MFT could take on a loan like this, so I would not recommend that we would plan on using MFT funds. Also, MFT does not have the money to take on a loan like that. They're essentially able to cover the resurfacing needs that we have right now. So to do MFT funds, we would have to reduce our resurfacing program by $20,000 a year, or $60,000 in 1 year. Break it up however you want to. MFT does not have the money. The general fund does have a surplus for next year right now, so either the $60,000 could eat into the surplus, which we've already talked about. There are a multitude of projects that have been being put off for years that need to be discussed and possibly funded out of that surplus. I do not, in the discussions that I have had, I have made the recommendation that while I appreciate the BDD Advisory Committee's position, and I understand it fully, and I think that it's definitely something that they had to do, I think that the village has to use BDD funds to accomplish this project in order to get it done.
Stephanie, just out of curiosity, what's the balance of the BDD fund?
The BDD fund, you all have the treasurer's report. Let me see.
281,000.
At the end of March, it was 289,000, essentially. I did run some numbers before tonight, and essentially the program has brought in about $505,000 over the 2 years that we've been collecting funds. We have used approximately $165,000 of that already in economic development programs, either redevelopment agreements, the repayments for the Gray Boy building. There's been about $22,000 in professional services and consulting fees over the 2 to 3 years that we've been doing this program. The real projects that we've done with this have been the LED lighting, some curb and sidewalk upgrades down on Prospect at the 4500 building. And then also we did some maintenance down there to public spaces. So this is essentially the first time that the village has tried to use these funds for any kind of public infrastructure improvement. I do not anticipate that this would be a common thing that the village would do.
I agree with the fact that the BDD, I agree with Kevin, to be honest with you. If you're going to have these businesses put in this 1%, why would you? If we were going to repave it anyway, I mean, why would you even get involved in the BDD? I don't understand why we would want to do that to them. Are they willing to negotiate at maybe not the full amount, but maybe we could give them back half of it or 2/3 of it or a lower amount?
Was the BDD mandated on you guys? I mean, was it something you
Trustee
have
Harn, that's a
option?
sensitive subject.
Yeah, that's a sensitive
subject.
It's not, okay, so.
Yeah.
So
No, we were I was asked if I wanted to be in it. I said no. I said, you gonna put me in it if I'm not in it? I went on vacation, the maps were changed, and I was put in it. The definition of BDD is to be blighted. I'd put $500,000 into my property. I could have easily shown that I wasn't blighted, and there are emails that I've FOIA'd that have shown that it was specifically kept from me. I was not told, and then I was put in and you could see from Heritage Square how much we generate from BDD funds.
So
between Burwood does about what Walgreens does. We do about an extra $3, $4, $5 million in sales. We generate a lot of BDD. So I'm in there for the next 20-some years.
So do people opt in? I mean, do people volunteer?
No.
I couldn't see why you would, because, I mean, it just makes you a little...
Because we were told, and I said no, because quite frankly, I went to my tenants and said, do you want to be in this? They said no, and I say, regardless of whether I want to be in it, I act like you guys act. I'm a representative of my tenants. If they're irrational and they say I don't want to be in it, then they don't want to be in it. It was originally pitched, and I'll be the first one to say I'm an absolute beneficiary of the BDD. I get BDD funds for my expansion, not the existing wing, but for the expansion. So I'm absolutely a beneficiary of that. But I will tell you, the way it was pitched to businesses was, you are going to generate this 1% extra funds, and it was said, it is free money. It's going to come to you, and you are... It's free money.
I remember hearing that.
Yeah, and I said it's not free money. There's no such thing as free money. People are going to have to pay for it.
So, we'll circle back to that.
Sure.
So what kind of projects besides a sewer or some lighting are you guys wanting to do with the BDD money?
So there's a lot of different projects as we try, and there's going to be a ramp-up period, and we're trying to expand that now. So there's been some facade improvements that are being done. There's signs that Aura Salon is doing. We are going to do about $25,000 improvement to our courtyard that we expect to ask some for that. I know I'm probably jumping the gun a little bit here, but there's also a line item for marketing in the BDD. There have been 8 videos shot of concerts, which I hope everyone would agree has been a huge boom to the Heights and towards bringing people here and meals and things like that. Those were professionally shot on video. Those are going to hopefully air on PBS this year. There's going to be a request for that, to continue to do that every year, to air those episodes on PBS that will, as you watch them, will show Peoria Heights and Grandview and the Tower, and it will create a live music scene up here, not just at Heritage Square, but in other places where concerts happen up here. They get videotaped and then they get aired on PBS. So there's all kinds of different things like that. There are projects we want to do that we don't have the money to do. We want a trail crossing, something simple at Marietta. Ornamental lighting up and down Prospect, which is very expensive. I'm talking like what you would see on Northmore University. The problem that we have with that is, even though it's really expensive and we think we can accrue the funds, the problem is we're going to fix Prospect, right? It's always 5 years down the road, we're going to do this big prospect. So we don't want to put the money into it because it's going to get wiped out.
Well, that's a good point right there, too, because the seal coating itself is a Band-Aid.
Correct.
This is a Band-Aid. If we don't do it, we're kind of in this together.
Absolutely.
If we don't do something this year, it's going to start to just deteriorating to a point where it's going to be big potholes and really in sad shape. It's not pretty now. And in time, Mike Casey threw me a number of $11 million for a redo from Prospect from basically somewhere right up here, I think Kingman, down to Lake. It doesn't go very far, and it takes a lot of money to do it. But I don't know if the village could dedicate a line item to start paying money back to a loan to a fund that they kind of created in the first place. But I think the village should make a good faith effort to work with you guys and maybe get the money back too. But
And I'll tell you, I mean, this is me not having an intricate understanding of your budget, but I will say as a business owner, and the other business owners are saying the same things. We got a lot of new businesses coming online in the next couple of years. That's a lot of extra sales tax. You're going to have probably an extra couple million from Heritage Square on leases we're negotiating right now. Potentially have a hotel, a mixed-use building that has no incentives tied to it, a pump house restaurant. If you guys don't have 60 grand to pay us back in 3 years from now, I'm not talking about a payment plan where you're making monthly payments. I'm talking about 3 years from the date, pay it back. If that money's not there to do that, maybe you need to relook at doing seal coating this year at all. That's our opinion as business owners to say maybe things are a little too thin in general.
We have some big projects coming, so I mean.
Correct. That's our thinking, was it gets it done this year.
What we have and never spend any money on improving what's already here, because we will spend a lot of money in changing water mains and streets and actual repaving, not the Band-Aid seal coat and some striping, but I don't know, it's tough.
I have a question for Stephanie, actually. So when the MFT, maybe Alicia, MFT, are you saying that there's not funds in there to pay the $60,000 back from the MFT?
No.
But we can pay it back from the general fund?
Yes.
Right? Even though it's an MFT project?
Yes, so the general fund can pay for any village business. That's the majority of the large road projects get done by MFT because it can only be used for road. It has to be a traffic light, street signage, or the road itself. That's all it can be used for. So like the curbs and sidewalks, some of the smaller patching, all of that's done by streets. General corporate can be used for anything. The real problem is that, right now we have a small surplus and a list of projects that need to be funded. State sales tax, and depending on what sort of agreements the village makes for some of those projects that are coming through, some of those funds could be tied up and we might be able to access them in order to pay this back. If the board does vote to use the funds and not accept the loan and simply use the funds, that doesn't stop the board from coming back at any point in time and saying, we have a surplus, we have the ability to pay these back, and so we're going to go ahead and do that. If the board votes to take the loan, then they are obligated to do so, or they must come back and vote again to disband that loan.
So in a good faith, we could go ahead and approve it, but at any time, if it really does cause a burden on us, I suppose we could come back and amend it, correct?
If the board votes.
But I think as a good faith measure, I mean, the BDD is very important. Don't you agree?
Yeah.
It's very
And, if that's what it's going to take, to maybe get some more businesses involved in it.
The other thing I will note to the board is that our audit will carry this liability on it until it is paid off, or it is disbanded by the board.
What about the TIF? Is any of it in the TIF?
Thank you.
Can you use the TIF money?
Thank you. I was getting ready to ask that.
For the roads?
So the TIF district, this should be a TIF eligible expense. Pretty much all of the BDD eligible expenses are also TIF eligible. That being said, if you look at your treasurer's report, there is approximately $187,000, I believe, split among the different TIFs.
Yeah.
This would be in TIF number 1, which I believe has the least amount of all the TIFs. I could be wrong about that. And currently, the TIFs owe a total of about $300,000 to the general fund, because right now, the TIFs do not have money to pay for their bills. So when we approve a TIF eligible expense, expense, the general fund fronts the money and then adds to the essentially due to, due from that the TIF is carrying.
So if we would approve the loan, we could get it from the TIF, but only if they're...
Only if the TIF ever has the money to pay for it. I mean, essentially, the TIF funds right now are allocated first to growing, second to redevelopment agreements and economic development. The village getting repaid from the TIF district is going to be something that's going to be 10, 15 years in the future.
Because I always thought the TIF was to help with our infrastructure, which is basically what we're talking about here.
It can be used for that. It's being used more as an economic development tool right now.
Okay, but if we improve our infrastructure, our sewers, that's a business development tool also. I mean,
yes.
Businesses are going to want to come in if we're improving stuff, and we need to encourage them to come in. I mean,
yeah.
I hate to make promises, but I think we really need to go forward with this. I mean, I appreciate Mr. Shields doing all the work he's doing, and 3 years down the road, if we can get these businesses in here, I know that's a heck of a bite to try and take on. Anybody else? I mean, Mayor Phelan, you got anything to say on this?
Well, first of all, we're having this conversation because the success of the BDD and the businesses and the economy in Peoria Heights, the investments that people like Kevin have made in expanding their businesses. So we have money on hand in the BDD, which is a good thing. In a way, we are putting a Band-Aid right now on a bigger problem, and it was mentioned earlier that it's probably a $10 or $11 million project to do Prospect the right way. And we have that request in the Capitol bill in Springfield. But right now, we really need to give that road some attention. So I don't think it's a good financial practice for the future to use these funds for operating expenses, but this is a very unusual circumstance. So the way the budget is improving, I don't think it's going to be a problem at all for the general fund to pay back $60,000 plus over 3 years. I think that's going to be relatively easy. So I would encourage everyone to
we need to cut some.
greatly accept this non-binding loan by the BDD tonight and move forward and let our public works folks get this.
And like Mr. Shields said, if we can't pay back in 3 years a $60,000 loan, what's that saying to these businesses that are coming to the Heights? Would you want to come to a municipality that can't pay back $60,000 in 3 years with everything that's being advertised, what's going on here? I mean, I would say let's...
I agree with you, Trustee Gett. I think the point Kevin was making is that in reality, the village can do with that money whatever they want. I don't think that's wise. I think this is a partnership. It's a partnership with our businesses, which is why we created this committee, and which is why so many of these business owners who are busy running their businesses spend a couple hours a month at these meetings talking about things, and they take care of the facade improvements, they take care of the grants, which takes a lot off of our plate. So I'm grateful to them for being very active in our community, and so I support it, and I thank Kevin for being here.
So do I.
And I just personally, I'd just like to say,
I'm sorry.
I mean, though I agree in theory, I don't know that it's financially sound to go ahead and make a decision based off a presumption that we're not exactly sure of. I mean, in an ideal world, yes, these developments would bear fruit, so to speak, and we would have the cash on hand, but in the event that that doesn't happen, what do we do at that point?
I don't know. I mean, they can't, this is not binding, so if we're unable to pay it
but
back.
But if we agree to pay the loan, according to what Stephanie said, then it is binding. Is that correct?
Well, let's ask council that.
Yeah, I honestly have to tell you, without looking, I can't say for 100% sure. I'm 95% sure that the village can't borrow from the BDD fund. I don't think it's legal. I don't know, did we run this by Klein by chance? Kevin,
No, I have not, nope. Yeah. This was
I know he's aware of it. I don't know what the discussions were specifically about the word loan.
Okay. Maybe it is, I've just never encountered the question of whether the village can actually borrow from it.
But
Now,
certainly
the
Illinois
village
law-
can take general funds and put them into the BDD fund voluntarily.
Give it back voluntarily.
We could
Yes.
voluntarily pay it back, but I would be uncomfortable without having a chance to look at the statute with saying, this is a loan and we're going to treat it
Well,
as a loan.
that's the way I thought the motion and the resolution was written, that this is a non-binding loan, but that the board, in its deliberations here tonight, would state that it's the intention to pay this back.
I would be more comfortable with
Yeah.
it structured that way.
I didn't, this was something that was brought up by a committee member. This was not, we weren't anticipating that, and I would say that it was not a situation where the committee member said, oh, no. Every committee member said, yeah, we got to help. We all understand this is a unique situation where the village is growing rapidly, and we need to kind of do things now that we don't, that as things are coming online, hopefully the funds will be there. So the committee members are all looking for a way to contribute now. Yes, loan is probably not the right term because we're not talking about interest rates or payment plans or anything like that. We looked at it more as a make-whole agreement, which is essentially to say, as far as we, okay, we're going to contribute to this project, but we would like a good faith sort of promise that, hey, at some point in time, we will contribute an equivalent amount of money to, let's say, a BDD project 3 years from now or something like that. Whether that can be viewed that way or not, I agree with you. It's non-binding. It's absolutely non-binding. There's no loan agreement. There's no anything like that.
I want to celebrate, what we need to really celebrate here is the cooperation, the spirit of cooperation. And I think if we accept the loan in a non-binding fashion tonight, then that will give you and council and administration time, because we don't have a revenue stream identified how we pay this back. So that will give us time. And I don't think, the only sense of urgency we have is getting this road done by the summer. Then we've got, in essence, months or 3 years to decide how this is going to be paid.
The way it was viewed by the committee members was this. There's no loan agreement. There's no binding. We have a payment plan. The way it was looked at as okay, we're going to contribute $60,000 X dollars to this. At some point in time in the next 3 years, if you want to voluntarily contribute that money back to the BDD, good. That's what you said you were going to do.
That I'm comfortable with. The way you
Uncomfortable?
described it, a make-whole arrangement.
You are comfortable.
I am
Okay.
completely comfortable with it.
More also, in a couple years, if we come back and say, hey, we want to put a trail crossing in Marietta, and now things are great in the village, and we come and we say, we want to put a trail crossing, we're going to put $150,000 into it. Will you contribute 60 grand? Because we helped you out 2 years ago, and now you have the money to do it, and you say yes, that's great. If you have the money to do it, and you say no, there's no legally binding anything, you're just going to have some pissed off business owners. That's how we view it.
That's a good point.
That's the way it's viewed by every committee member. No one's signing loan documents, nothing's getting notarized. We're going to help you. Help us out down the road when things are better. That's the way it was looked at. And I think that's good to build that relationship back up with these businesses, because part of the reason some of these businesses aren't in the BDD was because similar promises were made in the past that never got held up, and now we're building that trust back up. That's the way we
I don't
do
want to
it.
get too far off topic, but Kevin, let me ask you one quick question. Has the BDD had any policy discussions about expanding the BDD?
Nothing formal, but it is the opinion of all the BDD members that we want to do that. Because there are projects we are looking at that we say, we can't do it if half a prospect is in the BDD. So we are taking upon ourselves, as we do some of these projects, and we have some that are on our own initiative, to go to these business members that we know objected before and say, look, here's how the BDD is being run now. Here are some of the things that we want to do. If you will come into the BDD, we can do them. But we can't do them when half a prospect is in the BDD. So there haven't been formal discussions, but yes, there have been discussions within those meetings about, yes, we want to do that. How would we go about doing that? And that was one of the big problems was we saw this as being a huge obstacle to being able to overcome some of those objections that were originally in place of saying, you're going to get charged 1%, you're never going to see that money, it's just going to go to things like seal coating. And just go to those business owners and they say, well, what'd you spend your money on? And go, Well, it sounds like you guys got charged an extra 1% and we got the same thing. That we saw as a major hurdle to getting those people to come in because I don't want to force a BDD expansion on anybody. Me, of all people, I understand I don't want to do that.
I would ask you if you would, you and your committee would delve a little deeper into that topic. It's best, I think, that the business owners first discuss that before the village gets involved in it, but I would ask you to look into that further.
We will.
So are we looking to vote to accept as council said, acceptable with the terms about the loan? Or, I mean, we don't want to table this. We need to get this going. We don't want to table this tonight, right?
I want everybody to understand that what's on the agenda is a resolution to utilize BDD funds for $60,235.49 for the seal coating. So the balance of that is voluntary on the part of the village. The minutes will certainly reflect the discussions, and we need to do everything we can to fulfill that.
And I would ask then, staff, if you would prepare a clarifying resolution in the future to come back and identify.
I'd be happy to do that,
okay.
Yes.
So just one quick question.
Go ahead, Trustee Mariscal. Good questions.
So in passing, you had, stated that you had reservations about the legality of borrowing from the funds. Can you elaborate on that?
If it was a loan, I don't think that we could structure a loan where there's a loan agreement that the village's borrower, Business Service District is the lender. I don't know that that's a legitimate use of the Business Service District funds. What can happen is the village can voluntarily contribute to things that would otherwise use Business Service District funds as a effort to make them whole, and that's the best phrase you could use for it. We did something with Business Service District funds that was legal but outside the spirit of our arrangement, and down the road we're going to make you whole by contributing $60,000 to a project that
So then, Stephanie, this would not affect the audit then? I mean,
No, not as
right.
written.
So if it went that way,
Yes.
then everything would be above board.
Dan, does that answer your questions?
Yeah, so are we just going to go back and rework the language then of this before?
We can amend it tonight, or the minutes reflect whatever.
Yeah, just have the minutes reflect that per discussion, it's a use of Business Service District funds.
Okay.
But the village has, based on what the board discussed, agreed that they're going to make every good faith effort to make the Business Service District whole for the use of those funds.
Thank you.
And we're comfortable with that.
Okay, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker. Trustee Carter.
Thank you, everyone, and Kevin, thanks for being here. Okay, next is a request for the approval for tower rope repair in the amount of $28,655.09 to Kone Incorporated. Trustee Gett.
I make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Trustee Gett.
Okay. My question, and Sarah got back with me and informed me and talked to me about this. This water damage is because it's an outside elevator, it's exposed. Last year, we had to spend money, a good amount, before we could open up the tower, which is a very important part. Year before, we had to. Well, I would like somebody to look into winterizing this outside. There's got to be something. It might be costly, but it might be cheaper than dropping $30,000 a year on this thing. We have to do this. Don't get me wrong. This has to be done in order for this elevator. Yes. But I would like to look in the future about when they shut this thing down for the winter or whatever, is there a way to winterize this? Every place I ever worked at has had machines that were outside, we winterized them in. If it's cost prohibitive, fine, but $30,000 a year just to get our elevator going,
That's a good point. Let's put that on the
this has to be taken care
next
of.
departmental meeting, and we'll see if we can't reach out with Kone and talk to them about that. Trustee Gett? Get you some information.
That's very
Mike or Dave, do you have
integral.
any information, do you have anything
They do
that...
winterize it, it's the cable that costs.
Mike, will you come up to the mic so everyone at home can hear you, please?
Yes, trustee, yeah, they do winterize it. The cable's bad is what the problem is.
Okay, well,
So when they put the last cable on, I don't know the longevity. Not unless we ask them, and we can ask them, I can call
because
them.
was it last year we had to take care of, or the year before, we had to take care of the breaks? The one cable, one brake cable was bad, so we replaced all four of them. Makes sense. But, and that's wear and tear, but we need to look into something about
Some kind of a curtain or...
something that can, this stuff of it coming up $30,000 every year before we open the thing up, I mean, that's setting us back in the hole.
Well, I'd have to look in the past and see if it was 30,000 for the cable.
Well, it's $28,000, whatever, for this right now, so.
Mike, this says water damage. I think that's, we're
Yeah.
wondering why there was water damage.
Water damage now to this?
Yeah,
That's what it is.
that's what it says on here.
Sarah says because of the storms we had this year in the winter, correct?
But yeah, that was my,
Oh, the guy was telling me the cable, so
and that's,
he might have wrote it up wrong, but he told me the cable.
I'll
That's
let you,
why.
if you want
That's
to
why I
go
said
ahead and
the
explain to
cable.
him. Let's, Sarah talked to the gentleman.
I did too.
And she knows, okay, but this is what, go ahead, Sarah.
No, go ahead. I hear what you say.
oh, sure, yeah, no, I mean, this was a very quick conversation. He explained, and this is, we may have talked to someone different. I talked to the head guy at Kone. He explained that some of these damages may have been from water repair or water damage, and I explained it to trustee Gett that with all the snow and the rain that we had,
Yeah, but I mean,
that may play a really
yeah,
large part
I can
in
see that, but there's a brand-new roof on there, there's a brand-new air conditioner on there, everything was redone. He told me the cable, so I thought it was, he said the cable, so.
Is it just the cable being exposed to the elements that's
Well, I
causing
mean-
the water? Is that what the water damage is?
It could be, yeah, without me not, I'd have to talk to him. I didn't talk to him
Well,
after that, so.
I
But if it's water damage, we had all that, the whole elevator, the car was rebuilt,
A
remember?
couple of times, yeah.
Yeah.
times.
Well, I think we need to just ask Cone, what is their suggestion for the longevity instead of constantly being hit every year? I mean.
Right, no, I see.
Maybe I'm
Yeah,
not thinking, I'm thinking wrong, but
well, they,
this is very integral to our economy. I mean,
my solution would be to bring it all the way down and then throw a tarp over it, like you said. But bring it all the way down if that's feasible to them. But we'd have to ask them, we'll get with
does
them.
that sit up? I haven't really, does that?
It stays all the way up top, yeah. But I mean, maybe it's more feasible to have it at the bottom and tarp it. I don't know. We'd have to get with them or the supervisor from Coney. We'll do
wouldn't
that.
hurt to
We'll
ask.
check in. No.
Jeff, we will
Believe
get
me,
this
I'm
on
only
the
to save
agenda real
money.
soon, and have a
No.
thorough discussion about all things elevator and tower.
So are you still wanting to approve the 28,000 then tonight for the repair of that road?
We have to, otherwise we can't open the tower.
The state won't pass our inspection, and we can't open until.
I just want for down the road, so we need to, this going this year, and then down the road, we need to start looking at this.
I didn't really see this to read it, but it is the cables.
Is there a specific,
And they're saying it was caused by water damage.
is there a
So-
specific line item for tower infrastructure? Just curious, I don't know.
So it is the rope.
Does Stephanie leave?
It's the cable.
Oh, gotcha.
Sure, can you say it when she was here?
Not a big deal, just.
I think it's coming out of the Tower Park budget, right, Sarah?
Yep.
So Mike, do you
There is a
think that
section
all
for
of the
tower.
stuff that we had done
Specific one for
prior
Samarisco?
should have prevented that cable from doing
Well, the
that?
cables are out in the elements, so I can't really, I couldn't
really
say
say.
now.
No,
But it is,
we did-
it says the cables on here, so the rope, cable, same difference, so.
Because the stuff we did before, wasn't with the cables, it was the.
The brakes and.
The brakes,
Yeah,
which is,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's four of them, and one went bad, and there's no point in replacing just one and not the other three.
Right.
And then, I mean, how many times during the music fest had that thing stopped, so.
Right.
Let's take care of something.
Well, no, I mean, I'm all to save money, I hear you on that, but I will ask them about the cable, what's the life expectancy? Because I know we replaced that a couple times since I've been here.
To a certain extent, it's just wear and tear.
Yeah, just
Right.
wearing,
I understand that, I just,
But when they say water damage, it does raise an eyebrow.
that's why
Yeah.
I saw that and went, And then Sarah informed me what they said and everything, which helped a lot. Thank you for getting back with me.
Yeah, and Jeff, if you're able to get on that call with administration, we'd appreciate it. Anyone else on this? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker. Trustee Carter.
All right, we'll be at reappointments to the boards. The first is Board of Police Commissioners. It's a 3-year term, and the appointment is Bill Bishop. So I would ask for a motion to appoint Bill Bishop to the Board of Police Commissioners for a 3-year term.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker.
All right.
Trustee Carter.
Thank you. That passes. Next is the Zoning Board of Appeals. The appointment of Nick, I have trouble with your last name, I apologize. You're here? Tiarina? Thank you. This is for a 5-year term, so I'd ask for a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? And thanks, Nick, for you've volunteered to do this. You're doing a great job. We appreciate your service. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal. Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker. Trustee Carter.
Okay, and the next one for Craig is on the agenda, but we're not going to act on that tonight. He's debating whether or not he's going to continue, so get that back to you at the next meeting. So we'll move on to the Business Development District Committee. It's a 4-year term, appointing Rob Matheson from 2019 to 2023. I'd ask for a motion to appoint Robbie.
Make a motion, we appoint Robbie.
Thank you, and may I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker. Trustee Carter.
All right, and thank you to Robbie watching at home for all that you do for the Heights. Next is miscellaneous business. Any miscellaneous business to come before the board? If not, the treasurer's report. Madam Clerk, would you read that?
Sure. The grand total for all village accounts as of March 2019 is $2,147,020.90. The grand total in the Peoria Heights Waterworks account as of March 2019 is $852,925.86.
Okay, you've heard the treasurer's report. I would ask for a motion to approve it.
So moved.
And may I have a second?
Second.
I do. Any discussion on the motion or questions on the report?
Just want to say that on that first one was 96 cents, just to clarify that.
That was.
Not 90.
My apologies.
Thank you. Anyone else? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Trustee Harn.
Aye.
Trustee Gett.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Diane Mariscal.
Aye.
Trustee Riker. Trustee Carter.
Thank you all. Trustee Gett,
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
may I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Better run for the hills.
This happened. No.